Ice is a two-handed Valyrian Steel ancestral greatsword of House Stark of Winterfell, and arguably one of the most iconic blades in the A Song of Ice and Fire books and its TV adaptation. Ice is a large greatsword, wide across as a man's hand, and 6 feet long, meaning it stands out even among the Valyrian Steel blades we have seen in the series. The blade is taller than the adolescent Robb Stark, and from what we can tell from his short time wielding the blade, near as tall as Sir Ilyn Payne. Its Valyrian steel is dark and smoky, with deep rippling. Given the sheer size of the blade, being a greatsword, it would not typically have been used in combat, given its lack of maneuverability, and while the blade could certainly be used in such a way, it was more likely intended for ceremonial use. The name Ice appears to have a legacy from the Age of Heroes and predates the current sword. Thus, it is assumed that many ancestral blades of House Stark all bore the name Ice, with the Valyrian Steel blade we see in the books the most recent version of it. It is believed that about 400 years before the reign of King Robert I Baratheon, and thus about 100 years prior to the conquest of Aegon Targaryen, the Valyrian Steel greatsword was acquired by House Stark. Its exact age is not known to us, but being it was spell-forged in Valyria, given the doom came in 102 BC, the blade must have been forged at some point before then. Being a famous blade, it appears through the history of Targaryen Westeros. In 50 AC, we know that Lord Walton Stark used ice to execute Sir Oliver Bracken, who had rebelled against the Night's Watch. During the last days of the Dance of the Dragons, the young Lord Cregan Stark used ice to behead Sir Giles Belgrave and Lord Larys Strong the Clubfoot in King's Landing during the event that would become known as the Hour of the Wolf. The use of the blade to execute condemned men seems to have been a frequent use of it, especially by the time in the main books, where Lord Eddard Stark uses ice whenever he condemns a man to death. Eddard has allowed his bastard son, Jon Snow, to handle ice, something some see as a great honour for a bastard. Jon has sometimes dreamed of being regarded as a Stark and being given ice. During the events seen in A Game of Thrones, Lord Eddard Stark uses ice to execute Garrett, a deserter from the Night's Watch, after which Ned then cleans the blade with some oiled leather in the Godswood of Winterfell, something he does regularly. After Prince Joffrey Baratheon is attacked by Nymeria, the direwolf of Arya Stark, Queen Cersei Lannister insists that the direwolf be killed as punishment. Since Nymeria has gone missing, King Robert approves of Sir Ilyn Payne, the King's Justice, killing Lady, the direwolf of Sansa Stark, in place of Nymeria. Eddard instead volunteers himself to kill his daughter's direwolf with ice, with it being more of a fitting death for a creature of the north. He orders Jory Cassel to have men bring Lady's bones to Winterfell to be buried. After Eddard is arrested for treason in King's Landing, Ilyn wears ice in a scabbard on his back, using it as his new blade for executions. Joffrey, now king after Robert's death, orders Ilyn to behead Ned at the Great Sept of Baelor, even though his small councillors had agreed to send Ned Stark to the wall if he confessed his supposed crimes. A screaming Sansa Stark is present in the royal retinue during this event, but in the assembled crowd, Yoren prevents her sister Arya from witnessing the beheading. While imprisoned in the Red Keep, Sansa continues to have nightmares of Ilyn coming to behead her with ice. During the events of A Clash of Kings, after leaving King's Landing with Yoren and the Night's Watch, Gendry refers to the Red Comet as the Red Sword. Arya thinks of ice and her father's blood on the blade. Eddard's heir and eldest trueborn son, Robb Stark, now the king in the north, sends Sir Cleos Frey as an envoy during the War of Five Kings to King's Landing. Robb has Cleos ask for the return of ice, but Tyrion Lannister, the then acting hand of the king, informs Cleos that the greatsword will only be returned to Robb when he makes peace with the Iron Throne. During the Battle of the Blackwater, Sansa is scared when she sees Sir Ilyn in the Queen's ballroom of Maegor's Holdfast, with the highborn women of the capital. Queen Cersei claims the night is there for their protection, but she later reveals she wants Ilyn to execute Sansa and herself if Stannis Baratheon is victorious in the battle. Cersei then has Ilyn execute 3 servants who attempt to flee the castle. When he returns, Sansa notices blood drying on ice, as Ilyn has not yet cleaned the blade. Stannis is defeated, and forced to retreat. Later, when Joffrey receives prisoners in the throne room after the battle, the king orders Ilyn to behead a Florent bastard who remains loyal to Stannis, using ice. During the events of A Storm of Swords, Lord Tywin Lannister takes ice from Ilyn and has Tobo Mott reforge the greatsword into 2 Valyrian Steel longswords. When Tyrion sees Ilyn with a new silver greatsword, he regrets not having sent ice back to Robb, as the king in the north had requested. By this point, Robb had been killed in the Red Wedding. King Joffrey received one of the new longswords from his grandfather as a wedding gift and names it Widow's Wail. Tywin gives the other blade to his eldest son, Sir Jaime Lannister, but Jaime rejects the gift and instead gives the sword to Brienne of Tarth, sending her to find the missing Sansa Stark, and asks her to call the sword Oathkeeper. While ice is gone, Ned Stark's steel is still being used to protect House Stark.